Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. You get me and some crows today that will not quiet down. They have been there forever. I don't know if you can hear that. It's great. Today's video is going to be a good one. It is a part 2 of how to bleed your brakes. So we did the drum brakes on the last video. I'll leave the link below so you guys can check that out. But today we've got calipers in the front of this thing. Your vehicle might have calipers in the back, which is why I'm doing a part 2 to show you how to do these and how to bleed those. So it's a good thing to keep your vehicle safe, keep the fluids fresh, keep this thing stopping when it needs to. If you like it, hit subscribe, hit like, and as always, let's get to the fun stuff. Okay guys, on the front of the car we have the caliper style brakes. So your car probably has these on the front and maybe on the back. So part 2 of this video, I'm showing you how to replace the brake fluid on a caliper. So if you look at the back side, here is your bleeder valve right there. And this is the point that we'll change the brake fluid at. So the first thing I'll do is get this valve out and a brand new one put in place. And again, you don't have to change the valve. I'm just doing this because these are pretty old. There's 150,000 miles on them and I just want to put new ones in here while I'm doing this change. So before I begin to bleed the brakes, I want to make sure that my reservoir is full of brake fluid. Now we've already started bleeding the backside of this vehicle, so all of the fluid in here is brand new. And if I look in, we're full to the top, which is good because we don't want to, with low fluid, start bleeding these brakes, because what it'll do is force air into the system and we don't want that for our brakes. So with this full reservoir, I can start to safely come down below at my caliper and start to push fluid through here and get all the old fluid out and get this stuff changed. Okay, I'm going to replace this valve. So when replacing these valves, you'll have somebody in the driver's seat and you'll tell them to hold their foot all the way down to the floor. You'll take this valve all the way out, put a brand new one in, and then you can tell them to let off of the brake pedal once this valve is all the way closed and seated. Okay, down. Okay, up. For this part of the brake bleed, I'm going to use my one-man brake bleeder kit. So if you don't have somebody to help you, these little kits are very handy, just in case you're doing this alone. And in my first video, changing the brake fluid in the drum brakes, I showed how to assemble this, where to purchase it. But for now, you just put it on something metal. It's got this handy magnet on the back, so we'll stick it right there. And then this little tapered fitting fits directly in the bleeder valve, and you push it in as tight as possible so it creates a nice tight seal. And then you open the valve. You can see fluid already starting to come out of the system. And so what this does is gives me the opportunity to go up in the cab and push the brake a few times to pump this fluid out without sucking air back in. I can do this completely by myself. So I'll go pump the brake a few times and then I'll come back, close this valve just like that, and I'll go up in the engine bay and make sure that there's enough fluid in the reservoir, and I'll do this again and again until this old fluid comes out of here and it runs nice and clear. You can see even here this stuff is kind of brown, kind of black. It's just old, it needs to be changed. So I'll open this valve and go up in the cab and push the brakes. So I'm in the cab of the vehicle and I'll push the brakes 1, 2, 3 times, and then I'll go check and see how full that reservoir is. With the bottle halfway full, I'm going to close this valve all the way, and then I can remove this fitting as well as the little reservoir tank, and I'll dump all this old fluid in my container and I'll start over. Okay, I'm going to open the valve again. So open that up all the way and I'll go up in the cab and do a few more pumps of the brake. The fluid's starting to look really clear. I have the other camera positioned over the master cylinder reservoir, so when I pump the brakes you'll see the fluid level jump up and down. So I'll go do that right now just so you can get a view of how that looks. So I'm in the cab of the vehicle and I'll show you how the transition of fluids takes place. So I'll push the brakes once and then twice. You can see the level dropping and the other one filling up, and then the third time finally. This was a really cool shot. You can see how the fluids transition from the top all the way down to the bottom to the disposal. The fluid in the reservoir is pretty clean now. It looks almost brand new. So what I'll do is close this side up and I'll move to my final location on the driver's side of the vehicle. Okay, push down. Oh. Okay, good. On the opposite side of the car, I'm going to show you a different way to bleed the brakes. So you're going to need a plastic tube and you'll just hook it on the end of the brake bleeder valve. So when you open this and the fluid comes out, it can just go down into your catch and it won't make a mess. But the system that you do on this side is you'll have somebody sitting in the cab of the truck. You'll tell them to push down on the pedal, which will put pressure on the system. You'll open the valve and that will force fluid out of the system and their foot will go all the way to the ground. And then you'll close the valve and then you tell them up, and then they can take their foot off the brake and that will keep air from going back in the system. And you just do that same pattern each time and that will bleed the brakes. Okay, down, up, down, up, down. Okay, the system has been totally purged of all the old fluid, and look at this. This is my bottle that I'll take to AutoZone to have them dispose of all this old liquid for free. But the system has all brand new stuff just like that. So this old burnt nasty stuff that made the brakes feel squishy, it wouldn't compress right, has now been replaced with this new fresh fluid. I feel a lot safer driving this vehicle now. But the next step to getting this totally complete is putting the tires back on, taking the vehicle off the jacks so it's level, and I will fill this reservoir so it's between its minimum maximum levels with the car level on the ground. You can see right here that the fluid level is at the minimum line, so I'm going to just top it off with a little bit of the extra fluid that I have left and make sure it's within its min max level. So you can see it going up, and I'll fill it just below the max level and leave it there. That looks good. Okay guys, the final thing I'm going to do is jump in this vehicle and I'm going to turn it on, hit the brakes about 20 times to build some pressure in the system, and then I'm going to drive it and see if these brakes work. When you guys do this, if you decide to change out your own brake fluid, be sure to take it slow. Don't just go driving off and hope they work. Take it slow, take your incremental paces, and just be safe about it. But with that, this wraps up this video. It was a part 2, so be sure to look down below. I'll leave the link to how to change the brake fluid in drum brakes, which we did on the first video. And as always, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.